The air was thick with the scent of fresh roses and expensive perfume. Soft music played in the background as guests murmured in admiration, their eyes fixed on the grand hall adorned with shimmering chandeliers and ivory drapes. It was supposed to be the happiest day of Naomi's life. She had dreamt of this moment since she was a little girl, picturing herself walking down the aisle in a breathtaking white gown, her heart pounding with anticipation. And now, standing at the entrance of the hall, she took a deep breath, ready to step into her future. But in an instant, that dream shattered. A hush fell over the crowd. Whispers turned into gasps, and then silence. Naomi's fingers tightened around her bouquet as she tried to understand what was happening. Then she saw it. The man she was about to marry, Jordan, the man she had loved, trusted, and built a future with, was standing at the altar, his hands intertwined with another woman's. And then the words that cut through her like a knife. "Can't do this," Jordan said, his voice steady, almost indifferent. "I'm in love with someone else." The room spun. Naomi's legs felt weak, but she refused to collapse. Not here, not now. The whispers around her grew louder, some filled with pity, others with cruel curiosity. The woman standing beside Jordan was none other than her childhood friend, Tamara, a woman she had once called a sister. Betrayal. That was the only word that echoed in her mind. Naomi's mother rushed to her side, her grip firm on her daughter's arm, whispering words of comfort. But Naomi couldn't hear her. She couldn't hear anything except the rapid beating of her own heart and the sound of her world falling apart. The wedding was over before it even began. Hours later, Naomi found herself wandering through the city streets, still in her wedding dress. The once pristine fabric now dragged along the pavement, collecting dust and dirt. Her heels had long been abandoned somewhere along the way, leaving her to walk barefoot on the cold ground. The city was alive, with honking cars and distant laughter, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside her. She had spent years loving Jordan, years believing in their future, and in a single moment, he had thrown it all away. For what? For someone she had trusted? Naomi clenched her fists, fighting back tears. She wasn't going to cry anymore. She had done enough of that. As she turned the corner, her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden commotion ahead. A sleek black car was parked on the side of the road, its hazard lights flashing. A well-dressed man stood beside it, frustration evident on his face. He was talking on the phone, his free hand running through his perfectly styled hair. "Come on, I don't have time for this," he muttered, glancing around as if searching for someone, anyone who could help. Naomi slowed her pace, observing him. He looked important. His tailored suit screamed wealth, and the way he carried himself suggested he was a man used to getting what he wanted. But right now, he looked stuck. Without thinking, Naomi stepped closer. "Car trouble?" she asked, her voice calm despite the chaos in her mind. The man turned, his sharp blue eyes locking onto hers. For a moment, he just stared, as if trying to understand why a woman in a wedding dress was standing barefoot in front of him. Then he exhaled sharply. "Yes, and my driver is nowhere to be found." He glanced at his watch, clearly impatient. "I have an important meeting in 15 minutes. And this," he gestured at the motionless car, "is not helping." Naomi studied him for a second. She knew nothing about cars, but she knew how to keep moving forward when life pushed her down. And right now, standing still wasn't an option. "Where's your meeting?" she asked. The man raised an eyebrow. "Downtown, the Empire Hotel." Naomi nodded. "I'll get you there." His eyes narrowed slightly. "And how exactly do you Planned to do that. Naomi didn't hesitate. Trust me. For a moment, he hesitated. Then with a sigh, he nodded. All right, fine. As they started walking toward the main road to hail a cab, the man glanced at her again. You never told me your name. Naomi looked ahead, her expression unreadable. Naomi, he extended his hand. Adrian Carter. She shook it, their fingers briefly touching. Neither of them knew it at that moment, but this unexpected encounter was about to change everything. Naomi sat in the back of the cab, her hands resting on her lap, fingers loosely gripping the fabric of her wedding dress. The silky white material felt foreign now, like a costume from a life that no longer belonged to her. Across from her, Adrian Carter checked his watch again, his sharp features tense with impatience. The city lights flashed through the car window, reflecting in his deep blue eyes. He looked like the kind of man who had never been late for anything in his life. Naomi, on the other hand, had lost track of time completely. Hours ago, she had been a bride. Now she was a stranger in a cab with a man she had met on the street. Adrian exhaled, loosening his tie. So, wedding or runaway bride? His voice was calm but curious. Naomi let out a dry laugh, staring out the window. Neither. I got left at the altar. The words came out flat, emotionless, but she felt Adrian's gaze linger on her. He didn't react right away, but when he spoke, his tone was different, less sharp, more thoughtful. I see. That was it. No pity. No unnecessary words. Just that. Naomi was grateful for it. The cab slowed as they neared the Empire Hotel, its golden lights shining against the night sky. Adrian leaned forward. Finally, Naomi watched as he pulled out his wallet, but before he could hand the driver any money, she reached over and did it first. Adrian raised an eyebrow. What are you doing? Consider it a favor, she said simply. I'm not completely useless tonight, he looked at her for a moment, as if trying to figure her out. Then, for the first time, a small smirk appeared on his lips. You're full of surprises, Naomi, she shrugged. So I've been told. Adrian stepped out of the cab, but before he could disappear into the grand entrance of the hotel, he turned back. Come inside. Naomi blinked. What? You don't have anywhere to be, do you? She hesitated. The logical part of her said no. She should go home, take off this ridiculous dress, and disappear under a blanket for the next month. But then there was the other part, the part that wasn't ready to face the emptiness of her apartment. Just for a drink, Adrian added. Then you can go back to whatever it is you were doing before you saved me. Naomi studied him. He didn't seem like a man who invited strangers into his world. And yet, here he was, holding the door open. Fine, she said finally. One drink. The lobby of the Empire Hotel was even more extravagant than she expected. Marble floors, sparkling chandeliers, and the hum of wealthy guests moving through the space like they belonged there. Naomi felt out of place. A barefoot woman in a wedding dress, but Adrian walked in like he owned the place. A man in a suit approached. Mr. Carter, your meeting is set up in the lounge. Cancel it. Adrian said smoothly. Something more important came up. Naomi's eyes widened. Wait, what? You're canceling your meeting? Adrian glanced at her. I think this is more interesting. She didn't know whether to laugh or argue. Instead, she followed him into the hotel bar, where the dim lighting and soft jazz music made the world outside feel distant. They sat at a corner table, and Adrian ordered a whiskey. Naomi hesitated before settling on a glass of water. She had enough chaos in her life without adding alcohol to the mix. For a moment, they sat in silence. Then Adrian leaned back in his chair. So, tell me, why did he leave? Naomi inhaled sharply. She could have lied, could have brushed it off, but something about Adrian made her want to tell the truth. Maybe because he wasn't connected to her life, to her past. Maybe because, for once, she just wanted to say it out loud. He fell in love with my best friend, she said quietly. Or at least, that's what he told me. Adrian's jaw tightened slightly. And you had no idea? She shook her head. None. I thought we were happy. I thought I knew him. Adrian didn't respond right away. Instead, he studied her, his fingers tapping against his glass. People always think they know someone until they don't. There was something in his voice, something bitter. Naomi tilted her head. You sound like you've been through something similar. Adrian gave a short laugh. Not quite a wedding disaster, but yeah, I've had my fair share of betrayals. Naomi watched him carefully. There was a story there, one he wasn't saying, and for some reason she wanted to hear it. Before she could ask, a sudden movement near the bar caught her eye. A woman, in a sleek red dress, was walking toward them, her heels clicking against the floor. She was stunning, elegant, poised, and carrying an air of confidence that made heads turn. But when she reached their table, her expression was unreadable. Adrian, she said smoothly, I didn't expect to find you here. Adrian's entire posture changed. His relaxed demeanor hardened in an instant. Elaine, Naomi felt, and a shift in the air. Whoever this woman was, she wasn't just anyone. Elaine's gaze flickered to Naomi, taking in the dress, the bare feet, the glass of water. Then she smiled, a slow, knowing smile. I see you're keeping yourself entertained, she said lightly. Adrian's grip tightened around his glass. What do you want? Elaine sighed, as if this conversation bored her. I came to talk business, but I suppose now isn't the time. She turned to Naomi, her smile still in place. And you are. Naomi straightened. Naomi. Elaine tilted her head. Naomi. Interesting. Adrian's eyes darkened. We're done here, Elaine. Elaine let out a soft laugh, stepping back. Of course. Enjoy your evening. With that, she walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Naomi turned back to Adrian. Who was that? Adrian exhaled, rubbing his temple. Someone I used to trust. Someone who betrayed me. Naomi stared at him. They weren't so different after all. Two people betrayed, lost in a city that didn't care, and yet somehow, fate had brought them to the same place, on the same night, and neither of them knew just how much that would change everything. Adrian didn't say another word, just signaled for the bartender to bring another drink. Naomi could see it, the tension in his jaw, the way his fingers curled slightly against the table. Whoever Elaine was, she had gotten under his skin. Naomi hesitated before speaking. You don't have to tell me, she said, her voice careful. But if you do, I'll listen. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't respond. Then, with a long exhale, Adrian leaned back in his chair, staring at the ice swirling in his glass. She was my fiancée, he finally said. Naomi's breath caught slightly. Of all the things she expected, that wasn't one of them. We were together for 3 years, he continued. I thought she loved me. I thought she cared. But in the end, she cared more about power and money. He gave a short, humorless laugh. I found out she was working behind my back with one of my biggest business rivals, leaking information, cutting deals. When I confronted her, she didn't even deny it. Just told me that's how the world works. Naomi swallowed. She understood that feeling too well, believing in someone so completely, only to realize they never deserved that trust in the first place. She was right about one thing, Adrian added. I was naive. Naomi shook her head. No, you just believed in the wrong person. Adrian glanced at her, and for the first time, The hardness in his expression softened. So did you. For a moment, silence settled between them. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It was something else. Understanding. Naomi sighed, leaning back. Well, at least we both got our wake-up call. Adrian smirked. That's one way to put it. Before Naomi could respond, a loud chime interrupted. Them. Adrian glanced at his phone and frowned. His posture stiffened again as he read something on the screen. What is it? Naomi asked. He hesitated before looking up. It's Elaine. She wants to meet. Tonight. Naomi's brows furrowed. And you're considering it? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then, he set his drink down. No. But I think I know why she's doing this. She wants something from me, and I'm going to find out what. Naomi hesitated. Do you think it's a trap? Adrian chuckled. But there was no amusement in his voice. With Elaine, everything is a trap. She could tell he had already made up his mind. And against her better judgment, Naomi found herself saying, Then I'm coming with you. Adrian looked at her, surprised. You don't have to. No. She met his gaze, steady and unwavering. But I want to. For the first time that night, something flickered in Adrian's eyes. Something close to gratitude. An hour later, they were standing outside a quiet rooftop lounge in the heart of the city. The air was crisp, and the city lights stretched endlessly below them. Elaine sat at a private table, a glass of wine in hand, looking completely at ease. You actually came, she mused, as Adrian approached. Then, her gaze flickered to Naomi. And you brought a guest. Adrian didn't sit. Say what you need to say, Elaine. Elaine sighed dramatically. Always so impatient. She set her glass down and leaned forward. I have a business proposition for you. Adrian's jaw tightened. I'm not interested. You haven't even heard it yet. I don't need to. Elaine tilted her head, studying him. You've changed, she said thoughtfully. The Adrian I knew would have at least considered it. The Adrian you knew trusted the wrong person, he shot back. Elaine smirked. Fair enough. She glanced at Naomi. And what about you? What's your story? Naomi met her gaze without flinching. I'm just someone who knows what betrayal feels like. Elaine let out a soft laugh. Then I suppose you two make quite the pair. Adrian crossed his arms. Is that all? Elaine held his gaze for a long moment before finally leaning back. That's all. Something about her tone told Naomi that Elaine wasn't done playing her games. But Adrian had made his choice. Without another word, he turned and walked away, and Naomi followed. When they stepped outside, Adrian took a deep breath, as if letting go of something heavy. Are you okay? Naomi asked. Without another word, he turned and walked away, and Naomi followed. When they stepped outside, Adrian took a deep breath, as if letting go of something heavy. Are you okay? Naomi asked. He looked at her, and this time, there was something different in his expression. Yeah, he said, for the first time in a long time. I think I am, Naomi smiled. And for the first time that night, it wasn't forced. She had lost something today, someone she thought she couldn't live without, but maybe, just maybe, she had found something too. Not a perfect ending, but a new beginning.